Tonight on the Wrap, 7 dead, more than 200 injured after an Amtrak train reportedly goes over 100 miles an hour and derails near Philadelphia last night. Republicans took control of the Senate back in 2014. Can they keep control in 2016? President Obama speaks out about the media's representation of America's poor, and one news network really gets him angry. You'll never guess which one. And even before you say, are we talking Hillary tonight? Yes, and there's even more trouble for the Democratic likely nominee. And we've got potluck. We've got yay and nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my SiriusXM host and my Forbes.com columnist.
And my.
You're bookmarked everywhere on my computer.
In the butt, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
apparently somebody's reading prompter. That is Rick Unger. And to his right, she's the host of Close Encounter and You're Not. Lisa Janovitz is back with glasses this time, always changing her brand. And to her right, she's the editor of JaneUnchained.com. Jane Velez Mitchell, back again as well. All right, busy night. Let's get right to the Daily Download. And a new report finds Republicans may have a hard time holding on to their new majority in the Senate for very long. Political analyst Charlie Cook says the 2016 race, Republicans don't have the same advantage as they did in last year's Senate election. In 2014, Republicans won Senate seats in 7 states where, coincidentally enough, Mitt Romney won easily in 2012. President Obama's approval ratings were also plummeting, and Republicans had just a handful of seats they needed to defend. 2016 is a much different story. Take a look at the numbers. This time around, Republicans have 24 seats to defend, and in 7 of those states, President Obama won in 2012. Democrats have just 10 seats to defend, and President Obama won in all of those 10 states. Here are the 7 states with Republicans, with Republican senators, I should say, who won President Obama in 2012. Florida, Illinois, Iowa, New Hampshire, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And while there's a source of concern for Republicans, Cook points out that Democrats are unlikely to beat Chuck Grassley in the red state like Iowa. And another silver linings for Republicans as well. Senate seats up for re-election in blue states were not won by Obama by margins that were as wide as the red states won by Romney, where Democrats were up for re-election in 2014. If Democrats hold on to the White House, they need a net gain of 4 seats to retake the Senate. If they lose the White House, they'll need 5 seats. What chance do you think the Republicans have of keeping control of the Senate, Mr. Unger?
Well, look, Charlie Cook's terrific, but I wrote this article 2 years ago. This has always been obvious ever since the last election. We know who's up this time. We know what seats should be safe. We know what Republican seats are going to be tougher. Look, when you only have to win 4 seats, as you say, or hold 4 if the Democrats keep it, because you have the vice president to break ties, or 5, you have a very, very good chance, as this thing is made up, going into the next election. If I had to bet money today, particularly when you have surprises like Marco Rubio not running for his seat again in Florida, this creates a real turn right there. I would, sitting here today, bet that the Senate probably will go back to the Democrats, not the House, obviously. But.
We've seen that there's in recent presidential cycles, there's a constant uptick in the correlation between the Senate and the presidential race, or how the state votes for the presidential race. So I think certainly, as we've seen in the past, a lot depends on that. We saw that in 2012. And so it is kind of early, but from what we're looking at, a lot of people tend to vote according to the party line, however they're voting for the president.
I think that's a good point, and I think that for the Republicans it was a really missed opportunity. This moment of power where they could have really redefined the Republican Party and said, we're the party of all the people, and we really welcome diversity, and we're not just representing, for the most part, middle class and upper class white men. And I think they missed that opportunity by opposing President Obama on just about everything. They really define themselves by their opposition to President Obama as opposed to really creating their own agenda.
Also remember that Republicans tend to do well in low turnout elections. Midterms are low turnout elections.
2010, 2014.
Right, exactly. Democrats, conversely, tend to do much better in high turnouts, and high turnouts come in presidential years. So, I mean, the deck is clearly stacked, barring some things happening between now and the election, or a seriously failed effort of a Democratic presidential candidate. The deck is definitely stacked for it to return.
How much do you think it plays a role, Rick, when if Republicans were to keep the Senate and take the White House, suddenly they control all three branches? Do you think that scares people to a certain extent, or do they say, oh good, gridlock's finally over?
It's a great question. It really is, because Americans have a basic love of splitting the baby. They always have. They like, if the White House is in the hands of one party, they want Congress to be in the hands of the other. I don't know why it is, but it is. So yeah, I mean, but they tend not to do it consciously during a presidential election year, because presidential elections have coattails. So if you have a Republican that's looking good and is going to win in 2016 the White House, odds are they're going to make it better for the other Republican candidates, and they'll get that 2 years of having both houses. They'll probably lose it, though, the 2 years after that.
Jane, you mentioned before that Republicans opposed President Obama basically on everything. Were you surprised by what you saw yesterday when Senate Democrats actually opposed the president on trade while Republicans were trying to support him? I mean, it hasn't been completely the usual narrative, at least yesterday.
I wasn't surprised, because I think that Obama's biggest flaw is that he's just so interested in keeping his foot on the pedal of the economy that he's lost his values. And his values should really be speaking for the common person and speaking for the environment and speaking for what's really good for Americans, not just corporate America.
Why are you assuming it's bad for the common person?
Well, I think it's going to be a corporate coup d'etat, is how it was described in the New York Times, and I agree 100%.
Why?
Because it's really about accelerating globalization, and forget about mom and pop capitalism. Forget about all the people who are concerned about growing locally and eating locally and keeping GMOs out of the food supply and getting rid of big agriculture and industrial meat production and all the other things that are destroying our environment and really hurting our world. And it's all about just, let's have more trade. You know, good trade is good trade. Bad trade is bad trade.
Words to live by, I suppose. Look, you know, I mean, I haven't read this thing yet, and this is why I've been very, very cautious.
Apparently nobody has.
Nobody has. I mean, some people inside Congress have been allowed to take a look at it. But that's it. It's classified. And until I do read it, I'm not going to form a strong opinion. But I will say this, the arguments on both sides that everybody should be aware of. Obama is right. The president is right when he makes the statement 95% of our customers are outside of the United States. Why would we want to let them set the rules that we have to live by? So that's a fair point to be considered. On the other side, which is some of the issues that you're raising, Jane, and the other question is the impact it might have on domestic employment. Look, we have a thing, and the reason the Democrats are so concerned is we look at NAFTA. And there's a lot of concern that NAFTA was the key driver for all of these jobs that left the United States. Mm-hmm. No one's ever been able to prove it's true, so that means one of three things. One is it is true, and NAFTA was the reason that this happened. It's partially true, or it's not true at all, and technology was really more responsible, and pricing issues. So the Democrats have formed an entire point of view based on the belief that NAFTA was the bad guy. May have been, but we don't really know. These are the two sides of this argument. Till we read it, I don't know how anybody has it.
It's funny how history repeats itself. Because NAFTA was legislation that was pushed by a Democratic president,
right.
Bill Clinton, and passed by a Republican Congress.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. They agreed on that then, exactly, and here we are all these years later, and everybody is still in the same exact boat. Lisa, last word.
You know, and going back to the whole issue of the Senate, what's going to happen in 2016, a lot of these toss-up states, with the exception of Illinois, are not slam-dunk Republican states.
Right.
Maybe Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, but
you mean
really
Democratic
Democratic. You're right.
Yeah.
So a lot is still unknown. It's not an absolute.
The candidates, right?
Exactly.
We don't
exactly.
Yeah, Pat Toomey won in Pennsylvania, right? So there are exceptions in Senate races and congressional races. It's not necessarily a thing to stay blue, like New Jersey,
right.
you know, with Chris Christie or Mitt Romney in Massachusetts. I know those are are governors, but blue
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean blue on a more
exactly.
local level. Anyway, it'll be interesting, but we have 2 whole years to talk about, just like presidential elections. Meanwhile, President Obama has labeled a group of Americans society's lottery winners and reveals that Fox News makes him very angry. Who is the commander-in-chief talking about, and what has him so upset? Stay right here. We'll be right back.